Welcome in, everyone. The first Full Court Trap podcast episode of the beautiful month of March in college basketball. It's officially the best time of the year that we've been waiting on for so long now, Blake. I know you're excited. I was up late last night watching the ASUN Conference Tournament on ESPN+. We're officially back, baby.
Heck yeah. This is the best time of the year, man.
Yeah, but nothing like it. It's going to keep heating up as the week goes on. We got a lot coming up to preview in a different episode, but we're going to keep this one strictly focused on the weekend because we did have a pretty big weekend to kick off the month of March. So instead of trying to recap every single bits and pieces of it, let's just highlight specifically who our winners and losers of the weekend were. So, Blake, I'll let you start this off. There was a lot of notable game action this weekend. But we all picked three winners before me and you hopped into this recording. So I'll let you hit lead off here. Who was your first winner of this loaded weekend of college basketball?
It's definitely got to be the Bruce Pearl-led Auburn Tigers. This team has been coasting for like 99% of the season. I do think they're a national championship tier team. They're one of the best teams statistically in the past 25 years. In terms of offensive and defensive efficiency. So this team is, in like simple terms, it's generational. Like what they're doing with their like 10-man rotation is unbelievable. They went on the road to Rupp Arena and a crazy crowd to start off the game. They dealt with some adversity in those first like 3 minutes. It was like I think 5-5 at one point, which I mean, start of the game, it's expected. No game really is ever a super blowout unless one team takes advantage of opportunities. But this is a game that was basically dominated by Auburn, top to bottom, throughout the whole game. The guards and the Auburn team were phenomenal. I think they combined for like, what was it, 54 of the 70 or something crazy points
Yeah,
on the
you posted
night.
a graphic about it. I forget exactly how much it was, but it was crazy.
Like Miles Kelly had 30 points, I think 9 threes. Tahad had, I think, 21, and I think Chad Baker-Mazara had 24. So, like, this team, when they have Janai Broome, who's presumed as, like, the front runner for National Player of the Year, when he's having, like, 9 points and 6 rebounds and kind of getting locked down on the night, and you have guys that are able to pick up the like not great performance by Janai, that's when you know this team is unbelievably talented, top to bottom. They're definitely primed for a natty here within the next month. My second winner for the weekend, it's got to be the Tennessee Volunteers in a home environment against an insanely good Alabama offensive team. They were able to kind of control the pace of that game, I felt like, for the most part. And then they ended up having a big time shot. Like this, it was literally the first day of March, and we already had a high level buzzer beater with Janai Meshach hitting a dang near volleyball line, half court shot, whatever you want to call it. But he drained it. So that was a huge win against a really tough Alabama team to stop. Alabama, this is going to sound crazy, but Tennessee only allowed 76 points against this Alabama team, which we've seen them put over 100 against like some really good teams this year, multiple times. Like it's crazy. This Tennessee team was able to keep this team in check. And then for my third winner of the weekend, it's got to be the Central Arkansas Bears. They are 9-23 on the season. They're like bottom 3 in the ASUN, and they end up getting a big win last night in their conference tournament game in the first round. Nehemiah Turner, I'm going to talk about him a little later. He was phenomenal. So yeah, those are definitely my 3 winners of the weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with those three. Auburn, I was at that game, and man, they were able to suck the energy out of that crowd real quick. Because once Miles Kelly, he banked in 2 3-pointers back to back in the first half, got the lead extended, and they never really looked back. That's when you knew it
Yeah.
was just going to be Auburn's night. Tahad Pettiford, primetime Pettiford on the road again. He continues to deliver in big time spots for them. He's going to be a clutch player for them in March, I already know. And then Chad Baker Mazzara, it was just really impressive to see those guys step up when Janai really, in ways, he kind of got outplayed by Amari Williams. So if you're a
Yeah, he
Kentucky
did.
fan, I guess that's one thing you can be happy about. I was encouraged to see how Amari held up against what's obviously the best big man in the country. But I've got a take about this Auburn team. You want to hear it, Mr. Smith?
Definitely.
I
Shoot it.
I think that they are the best SEC team that we have seen since 2015 Kentucky. Like this is
Yeah.
just it's starting to get to levels of just domination that we haven't seen since that 2015 Kentucky team that absolutely ran through the SEC. Obviously was 38-0 and that was in a weaker Southeastern Conference as well. Like Auburn, they're blowing teams out of the gym in a league that is going to have 10 plus tournament teams. So it's incredible what they're doing. Bruce Pearl, I think he's continuing to elevate himself on the ladder of Coach of the Year. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't ultimately take it home. And then Tennessee, like you said, great win for them. That was a pretty tough blow for Alabama as well. I think we may talk about them a little bit later. But if you wanted to hang in there in the SEC title race, then you really needed to get that one done. And really just some questionable stuff down the stretch. I feel like Nate Oates kind of dropped the ball on a few decisions there. We'll get on that later. And then Central Arkansas, like you said, I had eyes on that one. Man, Nehemiah Turner, I can't wait to talk about him later and give him his flowers. But for my winners, I've got for my first one, Michigan State. They got a solid win on Sunday against Wisconsin, locked down John Tonje. The Wisconsin offense had nothing against them the whole day. And then earlier in the week, obviously, they had that insane half court buzzer beater by Holloman. And they've firmly established themselves at the top of the Big Ten title race where Michigan took an L yesterday to Illinois. That's another team we might talk about later. So Michigan State, you got to love what you're seeing right now if you're a fan of the Spartans. Izzo's got that squad rolling. They're in prime position to take home another Big Ten title if they take care of their business. They're going to get a matchup against Michigan on the last day of the regular season for them coming up here in a few days. So that's going to be a big time spot for them. They're looking to really overachieve what I think most people expected out of them coming into this season. So kudos to them. It's January, February, and then you know what comes next, Blake.
Yeah.
Izzo.
The month of his
The month of Izzo, and he's looking like he's got his squad ready to go at the right time. And then my second winner, the Vanderbilt Commodores, man, I called this upset, so I want my credit too because I saw this one
Hey,
coming from a mile
we gotta
away.
give you your flowers, Luke.
Ranked teams come to die in Memorial Coliseum. The 14th ranked Missouri Tigers dropped it in overtime. Tyler Nickel with a huge shot to send that game to overtime, and they took it over from there. Jason Edwards was hitting them with the little Curry night there. It was really electric to see Vandy. I mean, they're just really stamping their mark and saying that they're going to be a tournament team that you can't keep out. They were in bubble conversations just about probably a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and they've eliminated all doubts because taking out Texas A&M on the road and then coming back and taking out a top 15 Missouri team, that's going to be enough to get you in when you factor in that they've already beaten Kentucky, they've already beaten Tennessee, they've got a quality win against Ole Miss. This Vanderbilt team, I don't want to see them in a bracket if I'm a fan of a team across college basketball because they're going to if they get the right matchup, they're going to scare somebody. Their ability to just compete with the best of the best in the SEC this year has been outstanding to watch, considering where Jerry Stackhouse left that program. And Mark Byington, if this league wasn't so loaded and Auburn wasn't doing what they're doing, we might be talking about him as SEC Coach of the Year and maybe even more. So got to give your credit to him and the job that he's done there. And for my last winner, I got to give some props over to my rival over there in Louisville. They continue to just keep rolling. They entered the top 15 this week in the AP poll. They got a solid win against Pittsburgh at home. And Chucky Hepburn, man, he was unbelievable on Saturday. 37 points, perfect from three, 6 for 6. There's a lot to like there if you're Pat Kelsey's squad. I know that a lot of people are questioning just the overall kind of talent pool of the ACC and the strength of schedule for those teams that are kind of cruising through there, like the Louisvilles, the Clemsons, and the Dukes. But they're taking care of their business and they're not playing around with their food. So you always got to give your credit where it's due there. Chucky Hepburn, he's electric. as a rival of Louisville supporting Kentucky, it pains me to admit that he's such a great player, but man, he's hard not to like when you're watching him on the court. But Blake, let's transition over to the losers of this weekend, because this was obviously a weekend of a lot of winners, but also a lot of losers as well. So I'll let you go ahead and start off with your three losers of the weekend. Who you got for this category of the podcast?
The biggest one definitely has to be Kansas. I mean, you're at Allen Fieldhouse and you blow away this game practically. They're getting pretty stomped on in that first half by Texas Tech. They fought back in the second, but I mean, this is a team that's been nothing but a struggle bus so far from like mid-season up until now. They had their chances down the stretch. JT Toppin fouled out. Darian Williams was shaky at times against them. The guards for Texas Tech, besides Christian Anderson, in this game were not very good. So, yeah, they definitely had their chances. But then you got guys like Zeke Mayo, Rylan Griffin, Hunter Dickinson, all shooting their way out of this game. So, I mean, they kind of stabbed themselves in the back during this game.
And did you see? Not to interrupt you here, but did you
good.
see the little thank you fans statement that Bill Self made? That was
No.
bizarre after the game. You
I
want me
didn't
to
see
read
that, but I saw the Zeke Mayo stuff, like that
Yeah,
the fans messed. That's messed
the
up.
Zeke Mayo stuff.
There's
That's
no place
insane.
for that.
But yeah, we got to do better than that, people. These are college athletes at the end of the day. But Bill Self, I mean, I'm not going to read everything because it's 3 paragraphs, but he basically put out a statement saying we're trying our best, we've competed, stick with us. Like the whole thank you fans you see when a season's over. He basically did the formal version of that. So it's getting scary over there in Kansas.
Yeah.
But continue. I just wanted to note that real quick.
Yeah, I think Bill Self knows this team isn't like as good as they were projected to be preseason. I mean, they were number 1 in the country with their preseason rankings, and then they fell out of the top 25. They just lost to Texas Tech at home, which, I mean, got to give Texas Tech their credit. They're one of the best teams in the country. But then you look at some recent losses as well that I've talked about numerous times in this podcast. Back-to-back road losses against Utah and BYU. That BYU game, I mean, fine. They're a good team. They're top 25 now. But you lose to them 91-57 as Kansas. Excuse me. And then you lose to Utah as well by 7. Madsen absolutely owned that Kansas team that night. Then also Kansas State on the road. Baylor on the road. Like these, they're not very good losses. And this Kansas team has started hitting rock bottom, to say the very least. And then my next loser of the weekend, it's got to be Alabama. I'm not saying this in a malicious way, but they put up a good fight in that game against Tennessee. Lose it on a buzzer beater. That's probably pretty heartbreaking, but they got to regroup really quickly. The reason I'm putting them as the biggest loser is because they practically just lost their hopes for a one seed in the NCAA tourney. So that's rough. But I mean, hey, a 2 seed in this year's college basketball field is nothing to be ashamed about. And I do think they lost this game because, I mean, Tennessee practically matched them, like Alabama, with threes made in that night. And that's really been Alabama's like biggest thing. I felt like all season long is threes made. So it's definitely scary for Alabama. Like if they're not hitting shots, then I mean they're definitely beatable come like March Madness. Because a team like Tennessee, they're a defensive first team, and they just found out a way to win this game. So kudos to the Volunteers and Rick Barnes. That's a heck of a win. Like I said earlier, Jemai Mashak, unbelievably talented player for college. He's insanely good on the defensive end and hitting that shot when like the lights are the brightest, basically. Like everyone is watching that game, and you hit a shot like that. That's insane. And my third and final loser of the weekend. Arkansas Razorbacks. Sorry, but this is for you, Woo Pig Nation. I don't even know what to say. Like, do we need a moment of silence for them? Because you go on the road to South Carolina, who would be like a mid to bottom tier team in the ACC this year. You get blown out by them, show zero effort or fight against a really bad South Carolina team. They absolutely dominated the interior. Colin Murray Boyles looked like freaking prime Shaq, had 37 on the night, which is a career high. And it definitely just goes to show, like, this team needs a Due Thiero. Like, without him on this team, they're nothing because he's a high energy guy. He's a tenacious rebounder. He's super physically gifted. He can get downhill very well. And they're really missing a guy like that, especially with them missing Boogie Flan early in the season to what was it? Broken wrist, broken hand, something for the season.
Wrist-related injury.
Yeah, so definitely taking a Due out of the equation when you already have Boogie Flan out for the year. It's definitely a recipe for disaster, and I think we saw that in the first half, especially against South Carolina, where they put up a grand total of 14 points on the night. DJ Wagner, Trevon Brazile, Big Z, Adu. I mean, they all had really inefficient scoring nights. So, yeah, they definitely need a Due Thiero back. And, yeah, those are my three losers of the weekend. What about yours, Luke?
Well, you transitioned perfectly into what I was going to say because Arkansas, I mean, I know we don't like to pick repeat losers, but good Lord, what was that? 14 points at halftime?
Yeah, that's
the lowest scoring output of the century
it
for
just can't
Arkansas.
happen, dude.
Like, and this is a team, too, like, every time we start giving them some praise and they start doing stuff right, they immediately take like 20 steps backwards. And, you know, if you lose a game to South Carolina in close fashion, like let's say this game was 72-68, like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, tough
That's
loss,
manageable.
but
Yeah,
manageable. But when you get absolutely blitzed and we're down by 30 plus against the worst team in the conference at one point, like if we
They're
on
still
selection,
the worst team in the conference.
yeah, and if on Selection Sunday, if we're looking and Arkansas's not in the tournament, it's going to be because of this game right here. Like
Yep.
this is a game that cannot happen. And now they've put themselves in a position where they have to go to Vandy tomorrow. And then on Saturday they're hosting a Mississippi State team that has had ups and downs, but I mean they're going to be a firm tournament squad. They're top 25 right now. You've essentially put yourself in a position where you're going to have to go 2-0 against two very solid teams to say that you are comfortably in the tournament. And if you split 1-1, or if you go 0-2, that might be it for your tournament hopes.
That's definitely not what you want to be seeing if you're a Razorbacks fan.
And then when the conference tournament thing, like, yeah, they could win maybe a game or two there. I mean, they're going to be playing on Wednesday night at the SEC tournament against a very lower seeded team that the committee's not going to look super highly on. So if you're banking on the conference tournament being your way to build up more of a resume, you're going to have to make a run into like the semifinals, I think, if you're Arkansas. They've just put themselves in a horrible spot here. That was a loss that just couldn't happen, and they let it happen. And now there's rumors circulating that Due Thiero may not come back at all because of the injury that he's sustained. So if they don't have him, I think 0-2 is the most likely.
0-2, yeah.
I don't see them winning without Due. He's very important to that team. But, man, it's got to be frustrating if you're John Calipari because they get the resume wins against Missouri and Texas last week, and then they follow it up with this. Like, it's just brutal, and I don't really know what else you can do at this point besides hope that you split this week at best, and even then you're going to be relying on some other bubble teams to get some work done for you. My other loser of the weekend, it's the team on my shirt right here, the Kentucky Wildcats. Not necessarily because they lost to Auburn, but they did get news that Jackson Robinson's out for the rest of the year with a wrist injury. The worst possible news you could get at the worst possible time of year if you're Mark Pope. He's been trying to navigate these injuries all regular season long. It's been a real struggle at times, and Lamont Butler, he's still clearly not completely healthy. Andrew Carr, he's been dealing with reoccurring back issues throughout. Kirk Reese is starting to look like there's going to be no return for him this season. This Kentucky team they took another injury at the worst possible time, and Jackson Robinson is really the most dynamic scorer on that team and a guy that you can look to and say that he can confidently create his own shots from the perimeter. Like Lamont Butler and Otega Oweh, they can break people down and get downhill, but when it comes to a perimeter threat on that team, Jackson Robinson is really the guy that creates the space and is able to get jumpers off. And Kobe Brea, he kind of feeds more off of catch and shoot situations. So that was
Yeah.
just really rough for them. They lose him for the year, and that just sucks for Jackson as well for his career to end that way. He doesn't have any more eligibility. Just really tough overall. Feel sorry for him because he's been a tremendous player for them. He's won Kentucky some games in conference play with his scoring output, and yeah, just not the best news for Mark Pope if you're looking ahead to the postseason. It really kind of puts, I think, a cap to what Kentucky can do. Whereas maybe with Jackson, you thought you could be an Elite Eight, Final Four caliber team. This maybe kind of maxes you out at the Sweet 16, in my opinion, if you get the right matchups in the first weekend. But we'll see. Pope's been able to make some adjustments and right the ship at times this year, but this is going to be the most daunting task of them all. And they really have to keep Lamont Butler healthy as well now, too, because if they lose him again to that shoulder injury that's still there, and that could just be the nail in the coffin for this season. And then my third loser, the Michigan Wolverines, they got absolutely wrecked on their home court on Senior Day by an Illinois team that has had their highs and lows this year. When they're clicking, they're a great team, I think, and they really showed kind of the flashes of the Illinois team that we saw in the early conference play and the latter portion of non-conference play. They're finally starting to get healthy a little bit. They've gotten over the mononucleosis that Tomislav Ivicic got, and then some other ailments that had plagued that team for a while. Kasparis Giacchionis, he had the injuries as well.
Yep.
So for Illinois, I mean, this is an ultimate win for you because you go into a Big Ten opponent on the road, quality team, and you go in there and beat the brakes off them and extend your winning streak to, I believe it's 8 in a row now for Illinois, 8 or 9 in a row against
Like
Michigan. That. But yeah, and then for Michigan as well, this also sucks because you could have put yourself right there with Michigan State for the Big Ten title, but now you're like a game or half a game back, I believe, and you put yourself into a situation where you're going to have to go to Michigan State at the end of the week and win this if you want to have a piece of that title or if you want to clinch it. And they also have a midweek game as well this week. I forget who it is exactly. I'm trying to think. I looked at this earlier. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Maryland. They play Maryland on Wednesday, so that's going to be a tough one for them. They're going to have to overcome that, and then they're going to have to travel to Michigan State if they want to fight for a piece of that conference title. So really just a bad, unfortunate step back for them. Nothing was working for them all game long. Vlad Golden was really the only source of scoring that they could find, and that's the one thing that kind of concerns me about this Michigan team as we head into the postseason, Blake. They have Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden in the front court, which is obviously about as good as a 1-2 punch you can get when it comes to your big men. But the guys around them, the Navari Burnett, Trey Donaldson, I just don't know if I trust that or not.
They're like really spotty scorers, I feel like. Like there's games that they look phenomenal, but then there's games that like you're sitting there thinking like, what are these guys doing? And then even like Danny Wolf can be like that. He's shown a lot of inconsistency at some times this season. He's a really fun player to watch, and I mean, he very well could end up being like a March Madness legend type of guy here within the next few weeks, but man, this team definitely has their faults, and it's just going to be weird to see how like they really like shape up come Big Ten tourney, and then also with the NCAA tourney starting really soon.
Yeah, it's definitely not an encouraging result to see if you're heading into the Big Ten tournament coming up and the big dance. It just kind of raises some questions about what all this Michigan team is going to be able to do. But we'll see. They're going to have a chance to prove themselves this week and find a way to scrap and claw their way back into that Big Ten title race. But moving on from the winners and the losers of the weekend, I think we've about covered it all. Kansas, man, they've turned into a punching bag on this podcast recently.
Yeah.
I just want to get
Sorry,
that
Bill
out there.
Self. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, they've been providing some content for us in the wrong type of way, not the way that I expected to see in this season. But Blake, it's time for the Monday Trap Takeaways, weekly segment. I'll let you start it off here. I have a feeling I know what you're going to talk about, but I'll let you give your thoughts on what your trap takeaways of this past week/weekend in college basketball were.
I got to tip my hat to Nehemiah Turner for Central Arkansas. He was averaging 7 points and 4 rebounds a game coming into last night against Stetson. And man, did he have a dominant performance. He had 37 on the night, 13 of 15 from the field, and that's almost 87% from the field. And he had 11 made free throws with 12 attempts, 91% from the free throw or the charity stripe. Had 11 boards, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and 3 steals with just 1 turnover on the night. Now that, Luke, is what I like to call pure dominance. Like that, it's unbelievable what he's doing. He displayed some beautiful footwork on the block. Was practically unstoppable under the rim. Was catching lobs. Was taking his defender off the dribble. Was showing some really nice passing from the lower block. Yeah, this dude, if this team gets into March Madness, like if they win this conference tourney, the ASUN, then I mean, this dude very well could be a March Madness type of legend. Like it gives me like DJ Burns type of feelings because like since February started, this guy's been going off. I think he's averaging at least like 13 to 15 a game. I don't have the math on me. But like just from the stats I've been looking at, he's just been going off. Yeah, he's definitely a player to look forward to down the stretch here.
Yeah, I watched all that game last night. It was very impressive to see that performance he put on, and they're going at it again tonight against what I believe is the number 1 seed in the ASUN, Lipscomb. So
Yeah.
that'll be an interesting test there to see if this team kind of has a team of destiny run. These mid-major tournaments, expect the unexpected. You may think it's going to go chalk, but it rarely ever does. The magic of those mid-major conference tournaments, teams just desperate to get a spot and punch their ticket to the dance. It never fails to deliver. But mine kind of aligns with yours. It's just the fact that mid-major conference tournaments are underway. I mean, this is what we live for. It's the real madness. I tweeted it out last night. Ball knowers know that the real madness starts right now. These mid-major conference tournaments, they deliver some of the best quality basketball, like I said. Just teams that are fighting for a spot to get in. They want to just hear their names called on Selection Sunday. And that's when you get the real magic. You see teams that go on these runs in these mid-major tournaments, and sometimes they even make some noise in the big dance as well. We've got multiple tickets that are going to be punched this week. We're going to do a mid-major type of episode later in the week, picking our conference winners. I believe if my little sheet here that I made is correct, we're going to have tickets punched in the ASUN, the Big South. I believe the Horizon League is also going to have a berth this week. Ohio Valley will. The Southern Tournament, the Southland, the Summit. There's a lot of bids that are going to be punched this week as far as mid-major action goes, and I'm going to be watching all of it. My ESPN Plus subscription that's been gifted to me by my family is about to see the most action that it's seen in months, because a lot of these games, unfortunately, are behind paywalls, but you can't stop me from finding my quality basketball, Blake Smith. I know that for damn sure. But moving on from the trap takeaways to close this little episode out, let's talk about the AP poll, because this is really the last one of the year that's really going to be talked about, I think. It's the last one before conference tournament week. After that, all people are going to be worried about is the tournament seedings and the conferences, and then once we get to Selection Sunday. But Blake, we've had our AP poll reactions all year, so I'll let you start it off today. The really last meaningful one of the season, what did we think stood out the most?
If you've watched the podcast, you guys know how much I hate the AP poll, but I do think like this one is pretty fascinating to me just because of some movement within it. Louisville moved up to number 14. That's, I think, one of their highest rankings since like the Rick Pitino era. He's been dominating Kelsey has this year at Louisville. They've won 17 of their last 18 games. I mean, like that's a crazy number, honestly. They just beat Pittsburgh over the weekend. This Louisville team's hot when they really need to be. Chucky Hepburn, I've stood on this stance for the longest time. He's one of, if not the best point guards in college basketball this year. What he's doing is just phenomenal. I definitely think this Louisville team bumping up to 14 is really notable. And then another thing I thought was like kind of scary is Texas A&M. You've lost your fourth game straight, and you've dropped like 20 spots down to 22, I think it is. It might have been 15 spots, but I mean,
they took a bit of a free fall, to say the least.
Yeah, they're all the way down at 22 now. Like this Texas A&M team, they have the tools to be good, but I mean, like we've seen recently, if they're not shooting efficiently, which I mean, we've definitely seen them not shoot efficiently. I mean, they got boat raced by Florida, lost to Vandy in a game that I thought was one of the worst officiated, worst played games within the final minute. They lose to Tennessee at Texas A&M, and they also lose by a lot to Mississippi State. So if you're an Aggies fan, you better be praying Buzz Williams and company figures this thing out really quick. Wade Taylor's got to get locked in. Pharrell Payne, Zurich Phelps. These guys really got to get it going because, I mean, if they're not hitting shots, if they're not engaged on defense, then this team just sucks. And I'm not saying they suck, but I'm saying if they don't do those things, then your team is not very good.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, tomorrow, Texas A&M, we're going to talk about this in the next episode, previewing the week. They get Auburn, so yeah, go ahead and make 5 L's in a row. I hate to spoil the story right now, but I'm sorry, no. That I don't see that happening. And Texas A&M, that's another team that's just frustrating because in the regular season, at the very start, I mean, Blake, I was on the train that this team was upgraded from the get-go. Yeah, and I mean, this is why, because I mean, they have these runs where they look like they can be a very solid squad, and then they also have runs where they just look completely just not cohesive whatsoever, and they haven't made it to the second weekend the last 2 seasons for a reason, and these issues have been a big part of the reason, just inefficiency, not really functioning well together, and we'll see if they can get it turned around. I mean, they have all the pieces to. We've seen them look like a really great team in the SEC this year, and I still think that they're capable of doing some things, but they're going to have to get it figured out quick, and having Auburn walk into your gym tomorrow night is not the best start to things. So
it may just not a sight you want to see.
It may just have to wait till Saturday for them to get the revival going here. But my AP poll reaction was kind of like yours, Blake, with Louisville making their way into the top 15. Clemson, they're coming in at number 11. It's really intriguing to me to see these ACC teams that are finding their way up the higher level of rankings, and it really makes me wonder when the ACC tournament comes around if Louisville or Clemson are going to pose a threat to Duke, because they both had their shots at Duke earlier in the year. Obviously, Clemson got one of them done. Louisville, however, did not. So I think this is going to add a certain level of intrigue to the ACC tournament that maybe I didn't have originally, just seeing that these teams are playing better basketball as of lately. And Duke, they're due for a good challenge. I don't think they're going to get a challenge tomorrow. We'll talk about that as well in the preview. But Clemson and Louisville in the ACC tournament, I hope one of them stumbles into Duke at some point, because I think that could be a quality test to see what Duke's made of and what these other teams are made of when they compare themselves to the likes of Duke. So we'll see how that goes. But, Blake, we've got a big week ahead to preview, but we'll put the bow on the weekend that was. Obviously, a lot of action all around college basketball and a lot more to come as this month of March continues. So for now, Luke Tackett and Blake Smith with the Full Court Trap Podcast signing out.